Now, on the last tutorial, I got up to the part where I was just about to enter all the keys, and as you can see, I've filled them in now. I only skipped that part because it's quite repetitive and don't really need to see it because it were already there in HTML. It just duplicated and yeah. Although there is one thing I'll note, which is I used a more efficient code rather than making the controller just read a static message. I made it read the inner HTML of the button itself, followed by the action. So you can see it still works perfectly well. It don't show an action because I ain't assigned actions to them yet. But it's a lot more efficient. You don't have to write out all the letters and numbers twice. You're going to have to write them out once for each bit. But in this tutorial, I'm just going to be cleaning up the keyboard just so it looks like at a minute you can see we've got these buttons that are they're supposed to be blank, but they're showing up funny. We've got duplicate buttons here. Like, as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 enter buttons, and keyboards don't have 4 enter buttons. So, I mean, that's like a massive enter button, but it spreads across all 3 rows. So, I'll go through the HTML for that. So, for the first thing I'm going to sort is these buttons that are basically, they don't show up as normal buttons, they show up as small rectangles. So the reason they show up like that is because there's no text in them at all. But even for just white space, we need some kind of character in there to say it's white space, so it'll still show up as a button. So I'm just going to go to 160, and if it works, we should be able to see a blank button. But instead of a rectangle, it will show up as a full button. So there you can see, and it don't show you any of that random text. It still shows as blank since it's white space. So we just need to apply that to the rest of the buttons. So just copy that and just insert it in all the spaces where you can see blank buttons. And just save and refresh. And all those are fixed. So the next thing we're going to do is sort out this enter button, because we don't want 2 enter buttons there, we want just 1, but we want it to take up 2 spaces. And this is in a table, so we basically need to make a table data that has a call span. Now, call span stands for column span, and basically any number that you choose for it basically says how many columns that data will take up. So if you put call span 2, it'll take up just these 2 data bits. So if we just try it out first. So just make sure we're on the right bit. As you can see, we've got each row of the keyboard in these table rows. So we're just looking for, just check. We're looking for the second and the third row of the end for the. So just change that to row span. Alright, so now you can see that takes up 2 spaces, but we no longer need that enter since that does the job anyway. So we'll just go back to the page, and the enter on the third row, which is this one, we're just going to delete that out. Like so. So now you can see we don't have an enter there anymore, we just have the one big enter. So the next step is just basically, we're going to even everything out so that it basically, even though we're going to have some more, we're going to have new table data with nothing even in them, not a button, just to make it look like an actual keyboard, just so that all the spaces are filled and we don't have these bits that make it look like half the data's missing. So we're just going to fill these blank spaces in by adding 1 table data there, 3 table data to this row, and 9 table data to this row, just to even them out. We're going to make the space bar a lot longer instead of using that. And yeah, we're gonna, instead of doing that, I'm actually gonna just stretch the buttons, which should be longer. So the buttons on a keyboard that are now no longer is Shift, space, backspace, and caps lock. So we're just gonna make those longer. So first one, might as well do backspace. So just find backspace and put call span, since I want to make it stretch across the row rather than the column, even though the name's kind of misleading. So you can see all those 3 columns, 3 rows, sorry, match up, so they're all the same length. They all have the same number of items in them. So we just need to stretch out the space one by adding 10 to it. So just find the space button, which is this one, and put a call span of 10. So that fits as well. It doesn't matter that the button doesn't completely stretch to that, because we're going to be changing that with CSS anyway. So we just need to cover this one, and we're going to replace that enter with a shift and completely get rid of that other shift. So we're going to have a shift round on the left and then one on the right. I'm going to make them both 2, but then to even everything out, yeah, we're going to make one shift 3 columns wide and other 2 columns wide. So I'm just going to get rid of the enter. That's on the 4th row. And then bring the shift in, that's nearly in the middle, and basically just cut it out and stick it on the end. And then just stretch this with coal span. And make that 3. And then make this beginning one 2. Right, that doesn't completely match up. So just make that takes up 2, that takes up 3. So we're just going to make the other shift a bit longer. Can always change these later anyway, just as long as we've got them all so they fit. And that we've got just a nice rounded keyboard. So there, everything matches up, all saved. And now we're just going to do some integration with the virtual keyboard and the hardware keyboard, because we've got 2 scripts for both of them. But to make this system more reliable and a bit more efficient, we're going to integrate them both. So even if you're not using both or you're only using one, they both rely on the same script. So I did make a start with, as you can see here, instead of having the actual key again, we're using the variable, so we don't have to type out twice. So this is just to make it a bit more efficient, and it just relies on where it gets from the function itself. So I'm just going to swap this out. And just apply it to all these lines. I've actually got a quick way of doing this. I'm just going to do a little search and replace. So advanced find. Right, so we've got it again. We're just going to replace. Well, we're not going to replace. We're going to use the exact same, but just swap it out with the variable actual key plus and speech map. So it's all easily done. Now the bit we are going to have to do, just make sure this not affected anything else. No, it's all intact. Right, we just need to get rid of where it says the actual key in the message it sends back when you press the key. So we'll just do that for save and refresh. So all these still work, and all these work as well. So in the next tutorial I'm going to go in specifically on integrating them completely, because that was just basically making them more efficient. We haven't done the actual virtual and hardware integration yet completely. So I'll cover that in the next tutorial, so check it out.